Hey, good news for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Blue Jays are doing so well, not all their fans are noticing just how bad the start for them has been. To discuss that and more, here's our insider, Chris Johnston. CJ, a 500 team through the first 11 games of the regular season. One of the worst defensive teams in the entire NHL right now. Leaf fans are a little bit worried. How worried is Leaf management about what they're seeing so far?
Well, I don't sense a deep level of concern at that level just yet, Gino. And there's a few reasons for that. I mean, this isn't something you want to lean on as a crutch, but this is a team that has had some sluggish starts in recent years and pulled out of them quite nicely, generally speaking, with a strong November. So I think that there's that aspect of things. There's also, when they look at the last batch of games, some things that they like in those games. And no one feels good about the score at the end of the game in Columbus, but I think the Leafs felt like they didn't give up a whole lot in that game. The things they did were pretty glaring. Some big turnovers, odd man rushes, didn't get enough saves in the game to keep it competitive. But I think that from a process standpoint, they feel they're in a good spot. And so, it doesn't feel good to get this deep in and be at 500, especially as a team that has pretty high ambition. But, whereas the concern meter is probably starting to ratchet up outside the dressing room and in the city, especially once people stop watching World Series games every second night. I don't get the same feeling internally in the building just yet.
You use the word process. I want to follow up on that. We understand that there's a shift in the style of play. We understand that there's a shift in the intended shift in the DNA, as Brad Trevelyan has mentioned. What would you tell a Leaf fan in terms of how much longer this process has to be painful before they can start seeing dividends being paid for a new style of play that can be successful in the postseason as well as the regular season? My question is, how long is this going to take to turn around, CJ?
Well, I don't have the crystal ball for that, but I would say it shouldn't take much longer. And perhaps the system itself might need further looking at it at some point here. I mean, this is obviously for any team a bit of a work in progress. I mean, there is some hope on the horizon for the Leafs. For example, Scott Laughton, who's been out since training camp, could make his debut as soon as Saturday, with the team being back in Philadelphia, his former home. And, well, that's obviously just one piece of the puzzle and the bottom six forward for the Leafs. I think getting healthier will help them. They've played some games now without William Nylander, who's been in and out, and they're managing an injury situation with him. The goaltending hasn't been at the rate it's been in the past, but I think that there's a confidence level once Joseph Woll gets back to being able to play and they give Anthony Stolarz, proper amounts of rest and sort of replicate what worked so well last year, that those things will be back. And then ultimately, let's face it, Austin Matthews has not, to this point, scored at a rate we're used to seeing. And the good news, if you want to call it that, is that it sounds as though there's no injury issues with him. This isn't a repeat of last season in which he just couldn't physically get to a place he wanted to be at. Right now it's more about execution, about trying to find ways to get him the puck in more dangerous areas of the ice to allow him to do what he does best. But, I think that you look at all those various factors and the Leafs at least feel like it will be there for them and in the near future here.
Okay, Joseph Woll, he's back with the team right now, but obviously he's got to get some games in the minors before he's ready to join the big club. What are we looking at in terms of his timeline? Because right now, Stolarz is a tired guy. Their save percentage as a team is 29th in the league right now. What is it, a week? Is it a little longer than a week before we see Joseph Woll back and playing with the big club?
Well, there's no crystallized schedule yet or plan with Woll. I mean, a lot of this will depend on how he's feeling. Obviously he was away from the team for quite some time, and well, he did skate a little bit when he was on his own and not with the team. It's not nearly the same as, going through a training camp and doing, the normal schedule he would have through September. What I can tell you is the Leafs play a back-to-back at the end of next week, November 8th and 9th. Doesn't seem likely that he would be in the mix for that at this point. It does feel as though he's going to need a little bit more time, but before making his next start. But beyond that, the Leafs only play one more back-to-back at the end of November, so the schedule is a little easier for them. I mean, it's not quite as paced the way it was through October, and so I think that there'll be a window to get him back there. But as you mentioned, I would expect he will go to the American Hockey League at some time. But at this point, there's no precise plan for that, and so I think it's going to take a little bit more work for Joseph Woll to get back to a spot where he's ramping up and in consideration to take a spot in the crease.
You spend a lot of time looking behind the scenes of what's going on. That's why you're an insider. Philosophically, where do you think the Leafs management is right now? Be patient. It's okay. We're coming around. We've got all the talent we need to get where we want to go. Or are they out there aggressively looking to bring in people who are able to accomplish what Craig Berube is trying to teach here?
I think that they're still probably on the aggressive side of things. You know, we're not seeing a whole lot of action around the league just yet. But certainly Brad Treliving is a general manager that has a lot of conversations, that likes to be in and knowing what's happening when it comes to transactions around the league. And let's face it, I mean, with Scott Laughton coming back, it doesn't sound as though at this point there's any push to put Easton Cowan down in the American Hockey League. I mean, the Leafs have some roster decisions that are pending here in the near future. As they get healthier and they bring back a player like Scott Laughton. They've got David Camp playing in the American Hockey League. And so I still think that there's going to be some shuffling that happens with this roster. You know, big picture, they certainly want to add to their top six. I don't know that that's something that can be accomplished, right here, right now in the end of October, early days of November. But that will be maintained a priority. So, while there's no one panicking, I also don't think they're putting their feet up and saying, this will take care of itself. I think it's somewhere a little bit more in the middle there where they're looking for opportunities to have some improvements to the roster being made. And I don't think they'll hesitate at all to be aggressive. And in fact, they might have to make some kind of moves here in the coming days, even just to get a player like Laughton back in their lineup.
CJ keeping his ear to the ground. What's going on around the NHL? That's the early version of Insider Trading. The full version of Insider Trading with CJ, Pierre, and Dregs is coming up later today on the early edition of SportsCenter.